In this video, I'm going to teach you how to avoid the awkward silences that occur when in the middle of a conversation, you forget what the other person said and you leave this long, awkward silence. We've all been there. You're in a conversation, you're nodding, you're grunting, and then it's your turn to talk and you realize you haven't been paying attention and you forgot everything they said and you don't know what to say next. This isn't about being a bad person or being super bad at communication skills. It's a common experience. In fact, I polled my audience about what their most common listening problems were, and this was number one. I forget things that people are saying in the middle of a conversation. I leave awkward silences. Hi, everybody. I'm Bruce Lambert from How Communication Works. This is a channel where I teach you about communication skills so you can improve your relationships, succeed at work, and be more confident. All right, let's get into it. Why does this happen? Why do we forget what's going on mid-sentence? I think the main reason is our attention is just not that great. And our attention is pulled in multiple directions. We're thinking about all the things we have to do. We're thinking about what we just did. Maybe we're distracted because we have our phone or another screen on us. We're paying attention to what's happening online rather than what's happening in the present. And we just get distracted. We lose track of what's going on because we weren't really paying attention. The second thing is that there's a lot of stress and anxiety in our lives. There's a lot that's on our mind, and the stress itself shortens our attention span, distracts us more easily, makes us kind of more internally focused on our own thoughts and feelings, and less able to be totally present in a conversation. Also, a lot of the times we feel pressure to say the right thing, or our attention is all focused on what we're going to say next instead of listening to what people are actually saying so that we can respond appropriately. Now I want to give you several concrete, really relatively simple things that you can do to stay more present in these conversations, to be a better listener, and to avoid these awkward silences. The secret weapon is really being an active and intentional listener, which is not as easy as it sounds. It all starts with an intention. It starts with the intention to be a present, active, attentive partner in the conversation. Before you think about any techniques, it's really just about going into a conversation with the intention to be fully present and concentrate on what the other person is saying. There's a lot of pressure to think about what we're going to say next, but I think that comes more naturally when we focus really intently on the other person, when we're totally present with the intention to listen, motivated by curiosity, then we're following along with what they're saying. And it's generating things to say. And so the closer we pay attention to what the other person is saying, the more things we have to say, actually, because we're following right along and it's spurring thoughts in us. So when it finally is our turn to talk, we can just go with those thoughts that have naturally come up because we've been paying such close attention. So here are a couple standard active listening techniques that are going to help you stay present, stay engaged, and remember what the other person is saying. The first is the power of paraphrasing. That's listening very carefully and then putting in your own words what the other person just said. So let's say that they were just telling you about a new coffee shop that they were at, and they said it was really great, really comfortable, the coffee was good, the temperature was right, but it was a little too noisy. So at some point, and there's a pause in the conversation, you can just paraphrase and say, oh, it was really that good, huh? The coffee was excellent, but it was so loud you couldn't concentrate. You just paraphrase. And if you do this naturally and without making it seem like a mechanical technique, you stay present in the interaction and you prove that you've been listening. Now, with any of these techniques, you don't want to do them robotically. You don't want to do them constantly. If you, every time it's your turn to talk, repeat back what they said, they're going to think you're strange. So you do this just occasionally when it feels appropriate and when you want to remind yourself what they're talking about and also remind them that you're paying close attention. And also sometimes to clarify. Paraphrase is great at just clarifying what a person is saying, because if your paraphrase is wrong or incomplete, they can always correct you. The second technique is to ask questions. Questions keep you engaged in the conversation and they help you clarify what you're talking about and they keep you focused. So sometimes you could just ask clarifying questions. You said, oh yeah, you mentioned that meeting. Were you talking about the one on Wednesday or the one on Thursday? Or you ask open-ended question. So a friend tells you about a concert they were at recently. And instead of saying, did you like the concert? You say, what was the best part of the concert? What songs did they play? Who did you go with? How long did it last? What was it like? These questions encourage elaboration on your conversational partner's part, and of course, they show interest. The third technique is to make quick mental summaries in your own mind of what you're talking about. If you have trouble remembering what the conversation is about and you get lost and have these awkward silences, take a moment in the middle of the conversation to just jot down in your memory what you're talking about. This might seem overkill unless you're the sort of person who frequently forgets, and then it's worth the extra effort. So your friend's telling you about a podcast, and they're telling you about their commute, and they're telling you about some stress they have at work. And so you're just mentally taking a note. Podcast, commute, difficulty at work. And these are topics that you can bring up later or that you can respond to in the next turn at talk. The fourth technique is to pay attention to nonverbal behavior, your own nonverbal behavior and their nonverbal behavior. So when you've committed to staying fully attentive and you have the intention to be present in the conversation, one of the things you can do is not only listen to the words, but look carefully at their posture, their gestures, their facial expression. Observe the pitch, the rate, the volume of their speech. All of these things can give you cues to how they might be feeling, to the intensity of what they're feeling, to how they feel about the topic, and so on and so forth. And this can give you something to focus on. If you're drifting off or getting bored, you can sort of be like a detective and think to yourself, based on their posture and gesture or the pitch, rate, and volume of their voice, how do I think they're feeling? And this can keep you engaged. At the same time, you can think about your own nonverbal behavior. Typical advice is to like to sit up straight, lean in, nod, and then give these nonverbal cues that you're paying attention. No words, but like grunts. Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, wow, cool, all that sort of thing. Hey, by the way, if you're really interested in improving your listening skills and you're ready to make an investment in yourself and you like my style of teaching, go to listeningleap.com and get a free 10-page PDF listening guide that I wrote, as well as adding your name to the waiting list for a new listening course that I'm developing called The Listening Leap. That's listeningleap.com. My next tip might be the most valuable listening advice I can give. And it's really about a mindset. It's not about a specific technique. And this mindset is also, I think, the key mindset to develop if you want to be a better empathic listener. And that is to develop curiosity. To be a good communicator, to be a good listener, you have to be sort of intrinsically, inherently curious about other people, about what they're going through, about what they're thinking, about what their lives are like. You have to be curious. People love to talk about themselves. And if you have an active curiosity about what their lives are like, what their experiences are like, what their memories are like, what their observations are like, what their likes and dislikes are, then people are going to want to talk to you more. And if they can tell you're sincerely curious by the nature of your questions, by the quality of your attention, they're going to want to spend more time with you. So curiosity is the key. You've got to cultivate it to the greatest extent possible. What is it like to be them in this moment? And when you're in an empathic conversation, rather than thinking about how can I make them feel better? How can I cheer them up? Just think to yourself, how can I understand more clearly, more thoroughly, more completely what it's like to be them in this moment? So curiosity is the key. And you might ask yourself, how do I cultivate curiosity? I think it has to be a sort of long-term project. And it probably isn't going to come from a desire to just be more curious. You're probably not just sitting there thinking, I wish I was more curious. I think it's because curiosity will help you achieve other goals that you really are motivated by. So you want better relationships. You want more meaningful relationships from the people that you're already friends with or related to. You want to feel less lonely. You want to feel less anxious. You want to feel less depressed. You want to feel less socially isolated. I think that curiosity about other people's lives is a key to achieving all those things. And it also gets us out of our own head. A lot of us spend a lot of time in our own head. It's one of the reasons we're not good listeners, because we're too busy listening to the voices in our own head, our own worries, our own concerns, our own fears. We can externalize a lot of that energy by being curious about other people, and they will respond. Try it. I think you'll find that it really works. So maybe you're thinking, well, this person is just boring. I don't want to listen to them. I guess on the one hand, you could just not hang around people who bore you, but we want to see if we can cultivate a genuine curiosity about almost everyone. So let's say they're talking about something that doesn't interest you, a political issue or a current event or something in popular culture just isn't your thing. See if you can connect it to something in your life that is your thing, something that you're enthusiastic about, or something that's adjacent to or related to the topic that they're talking about, that you have an interest in and that can keep your curiosity alive. Or you just might wonder, how can a person be interested in something that I find so boring? And you can probe that. So the question is, why are they interested in this thing? What does it do for them? What parts of their life does it really engage? What does it deliver for them? Why is it interesting or important to them? I think if you follow these tips, you'll remember more about the interaction. When you remember more, you'll be able to ask more interesting follow-up questions, more probing questions that make the conversation richer and more meaningful for both of you. And of course, they avoid these awkward silences when you forget what they're talking about. So what are some common obstacles or traps that stop us from being better listeners and from remembering what the other person is saying? The first is just obvious. We're trying to multitask. You're trying to cook or clean or respond to a text message when someone is talking to you. I think our phones and other digital devices are probably the biggest culprit here. We're trying to be in two places at once. We're trying to be present for the person that we're talking to, and we're trying to deal with someone who's online or some issue that's going on in our phone. Multitasking is not really possible. It's a myth that we can multitask. Multitask degrades the quality of our attention. We just have to give our full attention to one thing at a time. I know this isn't easy. It's not easy for me, but if we want to be better at connecting to other people, we've got to just focus on them. Another trap is the idea that I already know. I've heard them talk about this before. I already know what they're talking about. This is the opposite of curiosity, and this is where we have to try to suspend the idea that I already know what they're talking about, or they've said this a million times before, and see if we can generate some novel curiosity about what they're talking about, see if we can probe more deeply and stay engaged. The other trap is what I'll just call the noise inside our heads. Sometimes there's just so much going on in our heads, so many worries, so many fears, so many distractions, so many other thoughts, or just planning for what we have to do next, or reflecting on what just happened, maybe with regret or embarrassment or whatever, but we're just not present. We are somewhere else in our head. And this noise inside our head makes it impossible to concentrate on what's happening externally. If you come to the interaction with this genuine curiosity, with an intent to listen, you can overcome some of that. But if the noise in your head is overwhelming, you probably need to practice meditation or some other mindfulness practice where you can get a hold on and begin to quiet the noise inside your head. If it's really, really difficult to the point of being impossible for you to focus, you might need to get some professional help until your emotions are better regulated so you can be present for the people in your life. You don't have to have some supernatural memory not to forget what's happening in a conversation. I think a few simple mindset changes and simple techniques can make a noticeable difference in how well you can remember what's happening. Pick just one or two of these techniques to try at any given time. Don't try to do them all. If you can't remember what's going on in a conversation, you probably won't be able to remember all these tips. So just try to remember one or two of them and practice those. It's really, really worth it to get better at conversation, to get better at listening. There's great evidence across social science that the quality of our relationships is ultimately what determines the quality of our lives. And I think the quality of our listening is what determines the quality of our relationships. That's why I'm so committed to the idea that listening skills are important. And if you like my style of teaching and you want to learn more about listening and you're prepared to make an investment, go on over to listeningleap.com, get a free 10-page PDF listening guide that I wrote, and put your name on the waiting list for the listening course I'm developing. That's listeningleap.com. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.